What is going on, investors? Hopefully you guys are doing well out there. It is Friday. The weekend is here. It's time to kick back a little bit because it's time for the FAANG Stock Recap Show here on the Investor Channel, where every Friday we recap all the major news and the technical chart patterns from all the major FAANG stocks. And this week we saw Tesla catch a bid. You got to see that technically. Are we going to see a rotation out of stocks that have worked, particularly around AI like NVIDIA, and move into other sectors of this market? We'll talk about that. We got a lot to get to. Better kick things off like we always do with Meta Platforms. Start of the week at 506, just sliding sideways like a lot of these stocks, down about 0.5% to finish the week. We'll call that at $504 per share. Now, earlier this year, Apple and Meta had held talks about an AI partnership, as Meta has released and developed a lot of open source models, which have been relatively well received in the community. However, it is rumored that Apple has said to decline integrating Meta's AI into its iPhone many months ago, and obviously going with their own models along with ChatGPT. Now, speaking of Apple, start of the week at $207, up 1.5%. Strength out of Apple to 210.61. Now, Apple is mulling some new goals for automation in its iPhone facilities. Now, this is something that the company has been putting off because of the high cost in terms of developing the machinery and the robotics, but it is rumored that Apple has instructed managers to reduce the number of employees or workers in the iPhone's final assembly lines by up to 50% over the next few years. This will have a dramatic shift on where and what regions Apple is able to manufacture their phones. If they are able to automate a large segment or a large portion of making the iPhone, conceivably, they could start making these iPhones in a lot more places. Right now, I believe just China and India. Now, Apple is said to looking into new battery technology to make replacement easier. I've done my own screens on my iPhone. It's been a while since I've done that. But when you dig into the phone, it is obviously a pretty complex device. Apple leaning more towards allowing people to replace screens, replace batteries, in some ways making the phones last a lot longer than they already do. What we are also seeing is Apple, I think, is very sophisticated in terms of where they price their phones inside the marketplace. And I think what we're showing you is they are right at the edge of what they can charge for these devices, because the minute they put them on sale, and it's not necessarily Apple always putting the device on sale, the wholesaler or the carrier can also put discounts on the phones to either draw in shoppers, draw in other types of sales, or just simply move through inventory. We saw and we reported on many discounts in the country of China that were put on Apple devices, and Apple's seen a surge in iPhone shipments by nearly 40% in May as those discount offers on those phones, proving that probably Apple doesn't have much upward mobility in terms of raising the price of iPhone, at least in the country of China. But the minute you discount this thing, they sell like hotcakes. Moving on to Amazon, start of the week at 188. Really strong week for Amazon. You'll want to see that technically as well, up a nearly 2.6%. Finish the week at 193.27. Now, Amazon could turn Alexa, that is the AI device and voice assistant that Amazon has integrated in a lot of their products. They are saying that it could be profitable if just 10% of active users are willing to pay a fee. We talked about how last week that Amazon is maybe potentially going to layer on a $5 charge. I don't know if this is something in excess of Prime, or if this is somebody that's not a Prime subscriber, but you have Alexa and you want to add the voice assistants or more capabilities that you're going to pay $5. I don't know. Most people in the comment section of the video said that they would not pay a fee, but analysts saying that if just a small sliver of people actually pay a fee, well, Alexa would be profitable. Now, interesting story coming out of Amazon is the fact that they're working on a ChatGPT competitor, essentially a chatbot very similar to Google's Bard or Gemini at this point, also ChatGPT, and CEO Andy Jassy is involved. The general consensus is that the product will work, and it'll probably work as well or somewhat as well to versions of ChatGPT or Anthropic's models, but will anybody use it? And I think that's where we are in the state of AI. If you throw enough money and throw enough engineers and certainly enough compute power at any type of AI product, well, you certainly can come up with a product. but will it be one that people will actually use? Now, Amazon is planning to launch a discount shopping feature inside of its popular e-commerce app to allow direct shipping from China. This takes on the Temus. Also, before that, you had Wish.com, which a lot of people have basically forgotten about. This will allow delivery direct from the mainland of China from basically retailers or warehouses there. You're going to get delivered in 9 to 11 days. These are people that like cheap Chinese goods, which is not something that I'm a big fan of. Now, Amazon joins the $2 trillion market cap club. As I didn't really connect the dots, we had that Rivian stake. Obviously, VW came in and made a strategic investment into Rivian. Well, Amazon has a 17% stake in the company. And so obviously when Rivian stock takes a move higher, well, that obviously benefits Amazon. We'll see if that shows up when the company reports their earnings next month. Moving on to Netflix, start of the week at 674.51. We're just a couple of weeks from Netflix reporting earnings, basically sliding sideways, setting up near the top of the range. Not a lot of news out of Netflix. Moving on to NVIDIA. Start of the week at 124, basically flat on the week, some ups and downs, but finished the week roughly flat. Now, NVIDIA-led tech sell-off, that was earlier in the week, had some people wondering if we are going to have some type of rotation out of the stocks that have just been absolutely ripping higher year to date, up nearly 150%. Over the past year, up nearly 200%. Now, can this outperformance continue? Well, absolutely. In the case of NVIDIA and many others, it can continue, but when they report earnings, it's got to be over and above expectations, which are already set really high. This is like when an athlete like Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods shows up at an event and they're expected to win already. Well, they not only have to win, but they have to dominate. And that's really NVIDIA's lane going forward, is they not only have to win when they report earnings, they have to dominate. And so I don't necessarily think a rotation out of NVIDIA means that the stock has to have this dramatic drop. We certainly can have some pops and drops and maybe consolidate sideways for a while. For a stock like NVIDIA, that might be worth it. But I think what this will mean is more conversation, more discussion around some of these other stocks that are putting up solid financials. You get the tailwind of a rate cut cycle. Well, there's a lot of stocks out there that maybe they don't perform as well as NVIDIA have over the last year, but they certainly might outperform the chip maker going forward. Now, Micron is a video that we did earlier in this week. Check the video feed for that. It's a memory maker, and they are saying that their high bandwidth memory, which is placed around the die of all of these AI GPUs, including those of NVIDIA's, shares of the memory maker dropped big time this week, as some people are saying this could be profit taking. It could be a resetting of expectations. I think you get a deeper pullback in Micron, and it's absolutely a stock that you can take a look at. Now, Intel is not just sitting back and letting other chip makers take the shine. The company unveiled its first integrated chiplet for AI. This is going to allow you to connect processors at a much faster rate. Now, it is in prototype phase. I've read maybe some surface. I'm certainly not a computer scientist. That's not breaking any news or anything like that. But Intel obviously has some innovations here. And if they can bring them to market, obviously also working on their own fabrication facilities, well, it is something that could be a competitive advantage going forward. We've obviously beaten up on Intel, and that certainly has played out over the last year, over the last 5 years, if you will. But it could be a turnaround story. It's something we'll analyze when Intel reports their earnings, also likely next month. Moving on to Google, start of the week at 179. Had a real nice start to the week, but ended up about 1.5% higher to finish the week at $182. Google ranks first among consumers in a certain survey when they consider AI. OpenAI coming in a close second. Then you also have Meta Platforms, and bringing up the rear is Microsoft. Probably depends on what industry that you are in. I certainly use OpenAI's AI services a heck of a lot more than Google, but I've noticed on those Google search results and certainly in Google Ads, they're offering a lot of AI assistance there. And we're also going to roll out Gemini Assistant in Gmail accounts. This is going to make AI features even more prominent in people that are not actively going out there and searching for them in products like ChatGPT. Now, Google plans to deliver a slate of Gemini AI tools for students. This could bring either a lot of assistance to the classroom or a lot of controversy as well, depending on what types of results and what types of things are coming out of the tools inside of the classroom. Obviously, mistakes on search engines get roasted on social media sites. It's different when you're a parent and maybe your kid is in class and the result is maybe somewhat questionable. So Google's going to have to really thread the needle here, and hopefully they come out with a good product. I'm in the classroom once a week when the school year is going on. I've had a lot of discussions with not only teachers, but the students as well as what AI will bring to the classroom. And it'll be interesting over the next 5 to 10 years, certainly as my kids move up into grade school, how AI is integrated there. Now, the company's Waymo unit is rolling out a ride-hailing service for all of San Francisco. You've already had other competition there as well. You have GM's Cruise, and then obviously Tesla has an event about a month from now where they're going to be touting their robo-taxi. And again, I stand by my prediction with robo-taxis. They will roll out in San Francisco, in Austin, in Miami, in the major metropolitan areas, which might be the only business that these companies need to make this a big business. But this is not something that is going to go nationwide overnight. Now, moving on to Microsoft, start of the week at 448. Basically flat to finish the week. We'll call that a 447. Now, Microsoft's OpenAI deal is going to face additional scrutiny. I mean, can you imagine that? Making a deal for something and then like a year and a half later, the EU or the United States knocks on the door and is like, oh, yeah, you got such a great deal on that company and we're worried about exclusivity. We're worried about all these things now. Now we're going to make you go back on that deal. It'd be like buying it'd be like buying a stock a year and a half ago. And then all of a sudden the SEC knocking on the door and saying, oh, you got too good of a deal on those NVIDIA shares you bought a year ago. We're going to reconsider selling you those NVIDIA shares. It's just insane to me, but these regulators obviously are voted on by the people, and I guess they can do whatever they want until they lose their jobs. Now, OpenAI signs a content deal with Time, that is a magazine here in the United States, one of the famous magazines, I guess you could say, to train its AI model. Time obviously has been around a really long time. I think it's a magazine that has been around for decades and decades. So they've got a lot of past content, and they've obviously continued to put out content in magazines, on websites, and this is the future. If you produce content, you're going to have ads, you're going to have sponsorships, you're going to have like Substacks and like Patreons and those types of things. And I think in the near future, you will be able to sell your content to train AI models. Now, Microsoft is looking to Amazon as it seeks to expand its Xbox cloud gaming. So what they're bringing is the Xbox experience to the cloud. So you don't have to buy an Xbox 360. You can have a Samsung TV. You can have an Amazon Fire Stick. You can just kind of log in, almost like GeForce, I think, works. You don't need a specific device to basically be playing on Microsoft. This obviously has to do with the Activision Blizzard deal, as well as they don't necessarily need you to buy the Xbox, which I don't think are wildly profitable devices, at least in the first couple of years they are released. It's really those game titles and the add-ons and the downloads. That is what makes money. And so the more devices you can bring this to, the better businesses is. Now, many in the analyst community are saying Microsoft has a, quote, hidden $100 billion opportunity, and that is going to be cybersecurity. We've covered many of the flubs and mishaps that Microsoft has had, I think on the government side in particular, when it relates to cybersecurity, but because they have such a stranglehold on government and enterprise, kind of cross-selling cybersecurity, only natural for the software giant. Now, moving on to Tesla, the big winner of the week, start of the week at 187. Boom! Elon Musk electric vehicle company up 5.6%. You're going to want to see this technically. It's like magic. All the way up to 190. We'll call that $198 per share. We're just rounding up here on this Friday. Now, Tesla is going to recall thousands of its Cybertrucks over safety issues. And unlike most recalls with Tesla, which tend to be like over-the-air software fix where you're just downloading software and it's not really that big of a deal, these are actual recalls where they're going to have to take these cars into service centers and repair things, I think like the bumper and the windshield wiper. But whenever you buy one of these kind of first model type of cars, and this goes for Tesla and Mercedes and anything like that, you tend to have these issues. That's why if you're in the market for one of these cars, it is actually a little bit wise to wait, unless, again, you want to go through the recalls and those types of things and maybe risk some kind of injury or damage to your car. Now, one of the reasons why Tesla soared this week is that Rivian deal with Volkswagen, showing that there's appetite in the electric vehicle space. showing that traditional automakers are still making moves here and kind of a rising tide lifts all boats situation. And while Rivian really reacted positively initially to the news, up over 25% this week alone, it did start trailing off towards the end of the week as reality does have to set in and the fact that the company still doesn't make any money. Now, Tesla's energy business is seen as benefiting from the AI boom. I agree with this. No matter what happens on climate policy or what president you have elected or not elected come November, these mega cap cloud companies are committed to certain types of climate pledges and all those types of things. All things considered, it does benefit them to using things like solar, which is something that Tesla has. Also battery storage as well, something that Tesla also is a leader in. Read another article about Tesla, about their robotics business and how basically everybody's valuing that business at zero. And in my opinion, that is the bull case argument for Tesla. The company is worth anywhere between probably $400 and $700 billion just on its electric vehicle business here and going forward. But the upside to multi-trillion-dollar valuation is certainly this energy business and obviously robotics as well. And I guess you could throw full self-driving in there too. Moving on to the technical segment of the show, the S&P 500 just sitting way up here. I guess you could draw I don't like to rearrange the lines, but you are sitting up here at the top of the range. So a lot of commentary that the stock market is poised for a pullback. So don't be surprised as we head into earnings season in July, maybe a little bit of profit taking, those types of things. We had Nike report yesterday and boy, that was a complete disaster for that company. Could have other types of things happen like that. Broadly across the S&P 500, pullbacks in this long uptrend should be brought. A 10% downswing from the highs that we are in now could take you all the way back down to about 4,900 on the S&P 500. That would be painful, at least in the shorter term, but again, should be bought. Moving on to Meta, companies hanging out in a zone in more or less a range between 450 and we'll call it 530 or so. Since reporting those epic earnings, that was 2 quarters ago. The company reports their earnings on, these dates are tentative, but Wednesday, July 24th. We are in a pretty epic upswing here. If you want to play the short-term bounce, I think you could probably step in on Meta right here at about 500 with the hopes that maybe you tick up to about 530. That would just be simply a shorter term bounce. When you're this close to earnings on these stocks, I tend to like to wait, but I could see the case that if you think it's going to be epic for Meta, they could create a secondary kind of bump above trend again. You impress Wall Street enough. This is certainly possible with this company. They impress Wall Street enough with their ad sales, with their ad business, maybe an acceleration to a buyback, maybe some other product announcements. You could blast up above to new highs on a stock like this. That's certainly one of the bull case arguments for Meta. Now, Apple's kind of already done that in preparation for the company announcing their earnings. Again, Wednesday, July 24th is when Apple is slated, so less than 30 days away, more or less kind of pricing in what this company is already doing. It's really about the future, developments around AI, how many units they can sell when that happens. You're hanging out at this upper level with Apple. Doesn't get super exciting unless you get pullbacks back to about 197, which is really only $10 lower on the stock. Moving on to Amazon, we finally were able to break out of highs that you made back here in April and then in May and then again in June. Also, these highs coincided with highs that you made back in July and November of 2021. So these were like multi-level kind of resistance points at this kind of 188 level. You broke above it and you did have, when you do that, you tend to put up like big green candles, a little bit of profit taking. Amazon, obviously, like most of these stocks, are in a really, really big uptrend and probably should be bought. Moving on to Netflix. Company is one of the first to report out of this group. They report their earnings on, this is probably a firm date, on Thursday, July 18th. We are setting up at all-time highs with this, and it'll be up to Netflix to deliver. Can they deliver something that is that exciting for investors that they just want to push us up into kind of a new stratosphere in terms of valuation? Or do you get rejected at this level? Rejections in Netflix, really for the past several years, should have been bought. NVIDIA, there is some concern, maybe a rotation out of NVIDIA. Nothing that I see here on the chart would indicate that, at least in the shorter term. Yes, you are well overextended on this uptrend that has been intact for many years, but you are actually making kind of a shorter term move as well that kind of started back here in October of 2022. By that view, you're not that far over and above where that level is. At some point, this uptrend flattens out, but unless NVIDIA really disappoints, would be actually pretty shocking if they do. I don't think you get these like big scenarios where you retest the bottom of a channel. Now, moving on to Google. Big multi-year uptrend. We've been also very similar to some of these stocks making a much steeper uptrend in the shorter term. Google having just a lot of momentum. Shares in Google should be bought. Microsoft also just continuing on an uptrend that we've been in for a while. Just confirmed another higher high here. Company reports their earnings like most of these companies less than a month from now. Tuesday, July 23rd is when I have Microsoft. Things look pretty solid for that. And now here's the most interesting chart of them all is Tesla. And it is decision day for Tesla. We are setting up at the top of a downward channel as this company reports their earnings just a couple of weeks from now. Wednesday, July 17th is the date that I have. Now, in the shorter term, we are making a series of lower highs. It looks like we are about to confirm another lower high here, but the difference would be, can you pop up above here with Tesla? Can you end this year-long downtrend that this stock has been in? In order to do that, I think you need to get up into the 215, 216, 220 area, really confirm that this trend is over and that maybe eventually we start to retest areas that we made back here in 2021, all the way up here at 360, maybe even a little bit lower. Our sights maybe not quite that high, back up to about 300. That's your upside with Tesla. It is going to be more or less about hype and less about actual sales and profit margins and those types of things. But if there's anybody better and capable of delivering the hype, well, it's probably Elon Musk. Now, if you bought Tesla in the shorter term over the past couple of weeks on this kind of like bottom channel test and then move higher, these are areas where, at least again, in the shorter term, you can trim some profits on the electric vehicle maker. Folks, that was FAANG Stock Recap Show for June 28th. I hope you all have a fun and safe weekend. Depending on where you are, stay cool as well. And I'll see you again next Friday. Good luck with your investments.